didn't ask for my consent actually to film this. Should I not have to sign something or say that I consent, under GDPR and everything? Should I not be consenting to something?
You're doing that whole consent thing again.
I am. I really am. I'm consenting hard.
You're like all those people who go, data protection is all about consent,
That's right.
but it's not.
No, there's an army of them.
All we have
An army.
the consent army.
Consent army.
So, seriously though, it's 4 years on since we got GDPR, and we're still seeing people get confused over lawful basis and consent, and thinking that consent is an important part of GDPR, or data protection compliance. And it kind of is, in that I think the processing of our personal data, to a degree, should be consensual. But I think consensual is different from needing consent. I think consensual is achieved through transparency and openness and honesty about what we're doing with people's information. And that means genuinely understanding the lawful basis. So if I, as an employer, I'm collecting information of my members of staff, and some of that information I need to collect in order to comply with employment law. I need to do certain things in order to comply with occupational health and safety. I need to do certain things in order to comply with VAT and taxation. So in all of those cases, I've got a basis in law to process the personal information, which means I can use the lawful basis where the processing is necessary for compliance with the law. I don't need consent to do that, because actually, believe it or not, if I was to ask for consent and you said no, that would force me to break the law.
Which is weird. But yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think organisations are getting confused between consent and transparency.
Yes.
So transparency is, this is the information I'm going to collect,
Yeah.
and this is why I'm collecting it, and what I'm going to do with it. And this is my lawful basis, of which there are 5 other lawful bases apart from consent.
Yeah.
And that's just for personal information. And then a multitude of lawful bases in Article 9 for processing special category data other than consent.
So that would be things like police forces.
Well, there's another facet when we get to police forces, so hold that thought. Right. But, so I need to collect health data for occupational health purposes to assess the working capacity of the individual, to make sure that they can do their job in a way that is safe and doesn't expose them. So if I've got somebody who's working at heights and they have reported an incident of vertigo, I would want to get them referred to a medical practitioner. It might just be a one-off and they can go back to working at heights, or it may well be that working at heights is not really what they need to be doing.
They should be doing, yeah.
Yeah. So I need to collect all of that information and process that information in order to do those practices. And Article 9 allows me to do that.
Yes.
There is a lawful basis
Yes.
where the processing is necessary for the purposes of occupational health, health systems, health management, and a whole range of other things.
Yes.
So I don't need consent to do that. So consent is like this rabbit that keeps getting in the way of us getting to the real fruit, which is the lawful basis.
Yes.
And you mentioned police forces.
Yes. That was that thought.
Yeah. So police forces have additional obligations where they're processing information for law enforcement purposes. So you have to think of police forces almost as being 2 organisations in one.
Yeah.
There's the half that complies with the general data protection regulations.
Yeah.
That's all the employment stuff and that stuff I've just been talking about.
Yeah.
Then there's the special stuff they do in order to catch the baddies.
Yes.
And the legislation makes special allowances for lawful basis, because obviously if I say to you, can I collect your personal information so I can then prosecute you for a crime, and you say no.
No.
So again, consent is not appropriate. But the lawful basis is where the processing is necessary for, the apprehension and prosecution of an offender, for example.
Yeah.
So there is so much within lawful basis that is useful and can help us to do data protection really well by understanding the purpose for which we're collecting information in the first place. But being lazy and going down the consent route all the time, well, all that's doing is setting lots of little tripwires. Because at some point somebody's going to say no, and then what do you do? And that brings me back to the difference between consent and
Transparency.
And that brings me back to the difference between consent and transparency.
Yeah.
You try saying that.
Transparency. Oh, that.
Oh, yeah. Right, so the transparency bit is, this is what I'm collecting, this is why I'm collecting it, this is the lawful basis, this is what I'm going to do with it, this is how long I'm going to keep it for, if appropriate, this is who I'll share it with. Then what we do is we try to bolt consent onto the bottom of that and go, is that okay?
Yeah.
We don't need that last bit,
No.
because we've got the lawful basis.
So maybe one of the things that we could potentially do, here on our YouTube channel, is a little bit more discussion around some of the other bases. Maybe that might be helpful. So if you're confused about which basis you should be using, or which combination, or whatever it is, we could bring some clarity around that. So we had a bit of fun talking about consent, but maybe that would be a good thing.
Maybe you could get in touch and tell us which lawful basis you'd like us to talk about.
Drop us a comment below.